But you know, he was a product of this area he was brought up in. Mining stock, the loyalty, the unity, people who stand shoulder to shoulder with each other, have their doors opened. His father, the people in this area who go down to the bells of the earth to earn their living. He never forgot that. He always knew his roots.
Long before Bobby Robson became a name synonymous with sport and success the world over, his name people trusted and respected. If the coal seams of County Durham needed light, then fearless and thorough, he would often walk miles to ensure miners could safely find their way through perilous shafts and treacherous tunnels. And like so many northeastern lads of his era, it seemed Bobby was destined for a life underground. But Bobby will always be remembered by England fans as the manager who took his country to the brink of World Cup success in 1990, only to be denied by German penalties and touched by Gazza's tears.
I remember thinking that I don't think we'll ever see again an England manager who could boast Pittman on his CV as a previous job. So in that respect, he really was unique.
He took some of the directors, the sort of Eton educated, if you like, directors of Ipswich Town, down a mine in Derbyshire through the good work of my older uncle, who was still working for the NCB, the National Coal Board.
They organised this trip and went down this coal mine, which I think was about a quarter of a mile long, down a shaft, and had to crawl on their hands and knees to get to the coal face to see how it all operated and worked. And that was a good, idea, or give it a good perception of what life was like as he had lived up here in the northeast, and spent a year and a half, I think, down the coal mines from the age of 15 to 16 and a half, I think, before he started his footballing career down at Fulham.
I used to go into Durham every Saturday morning in the summer. First of all to swim. I was learning to swim, and then I was allowed to, my mother gave me a 10-bob note or something like that, and then she allowed me to buy a record, you know. I've always loved music. I used to sing in the bathroom. mainly the old ballads, you know. Where and When, the song Where and When is a favourite of mine.
We looked at each other in the same way, but I can't remember where or when.
I was very passionate about music. I could, you know, sit at home and put the radiogram on and play music mostly all night. And over the years, I learned most of the words of most of the popular songs. So when Sonata would sing, like I'm saying, this song, Where or When, which is one of my favorites, I could beat him to every word. So I was ahead of him, you know. I used to let him follow me. It's a beautiful song. It came out really in the 1990 World Cup, where I was obviously at the time the manager of England. It meant a lot to me. It was very emotional. The three tenors were just simply the best in the world, and they made that particular song unforgettable.
Newcastle fans love a goal-scoring centre-forward. Few were taken to their hearts like the bustling Supermac.
McDonald against Thompson.
I was, at the time, playing as a right back for Tunbridge in the Southern League, and my manager was Harry Haslam, who left the club and he went to Fulham and he became the chief scout for Bobby Robson. This was Bobby Robson's first managerial appointment. Harry Haslam was his chief scout, and the next thing, Bobby Robson was knocking on my door saying, we've done a deal with Tunbridge, would you like to come and sign for Fulham? And I'd just been having trials with Crystal Palace, and there were so many professional footballers in Crystal Palace, I could never see a way of ever getting a chance there. And so I jumped at the chance because Bobby Robson, I had seen him play in both his spells at Fulham Football Club. Very sad when he went to West Brom. He came back to Fulham and then he went off to Canada as a coach. And he had been one of my favourites, playing alongside Johnny Haynes and all the other guys there at Craven Cottage. And here he was now as manager offering me a contract. I was 18 years of age. This was my great opportunity. Fulham had just been relegated to the second division from the old first division, and he was offering me less than I was getting at Tunbridge, basically. But the opportunity comes maybe just once in a lifetime, and when it does come, you can't turn your back on it. So I took it. He put me into the first team. There were loads of injuries. And he had actually signed me as a fullback, but he kept putting me up front in the reserves. And I'd started scoring a few goals there. Harry Haslam had done similar with me at Tunbridge, played me at fullback, but every now and again just put me up front, and I enjoyed the freedom of it. And I think Harry had a word in Bobby's ear. Stick him up front. There's a load of injuries. You won't regret it.
McDonald! McDonald drive in a match for England.
I played 6 games up front for Bobby Robson, scored 5 goals. Not bad, is it? No, then they sacked Bobby Robson and I never played again.
It's another working day for Bobby Robson. 48 years of age last Wednesday, Robson has spent his life in football. A miner's son from County Durham, which has produced a few footballers, he was a talented and versatile player with Fulham and West Bromwich Albion.
I was working for BBC Radio at the time in the early 70s, and they sent me to report on a match between Ipswich and somebody. And he was absolutely charming, and afterwards I introduced him to my son, who at the time was 7 years of age. And he said, "Oh, is this your lad?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Excuse me a minute." And he went off and he got him a signed shirt with all the players on it, a hat, a scarf. My son became an Ipswich supporter. So I had to disabuse him of that over the years. But that was the first time I really had a proper conversation with him. And he was charming to my little boy, and he was charming to me.
Now Law. Oh, beautiful body swerve to Kidd. Sean Aston in the middle. And here comes Charlton. Oh, a great goal!
The first time I met him was the first time Man United played against Fulham. And they came up actually into the first division, I remember. And that was when the first time I met him. I played against him, Johnny Haynes, you know, I remember. And the one thing I knew straight away, you know, he was a Geordie, eh? Yeah. He was a Geordie, and he was always really proud of being a Geordie. He wanted nothing more than to have a good chat about something and get somebody to translate some of the language up here, you know. It was really, really good fun.
Charlton. Oh, a great goal!
After the Munich crash, you flew with Bobby Charlton.
Yes, I did. We actually sat next to each other. And to be fair to Bobby, he was a little nervous. Who wouldn't be, having survived an aeroplane disaster? And I'm sure you've been in a plane like I have many times, where you're coming through the cloud and you can't see the ground. And you think, get this plane down. You know, where are we? You know, and then all of a sudden you break cloud and you see the fields and the land, and you think, yeah, we're close to landing, so that's fine. And as this plane went through the cloud, and there was no visible sign of anything except cloud, Bobby was a bit uncertain. He was sweating a little bit, and I remember putting my hand on him saying, "We're all right, pal, you know, we'll get there, just hang in there." So it was a moment I will never forget, and I was proud actually on that particular day to sit next to Bobby. He must have gone through a nightmare of a life after the plane crash.
Well, I've always got on great with Bob. I mean, even when he was at Fulham, and I played against him quite a few times over the years, and we used to go to the Lily Show. This is when you went for your coaching badges, you know, and I was eventually a staff coach, and Bob was a staff coach, which is an appointment, not a grade. And we got on very well together because we're both Geordie lads, we both know the area, and it's just, when you see somebody in football who's from the northeast, you automatically go towards each other, and you get to like each other. And I've always felt that I got on great with Bob. He's a smashing fella.
I do remember the first time I met him. It was actually on the pitch at Wembley. He was guest of honour for a game. I was a player for England, and as you go along the line and sort of shook his hand. Little did I know that a few years later that he'd actually be managing me at Newcastle, which was a great experience.
We met Bobby at the match?
Yeah, when he was manager of Newcastle. And so it must have been, what, 2004, 2005. And we were there, and we got word to wherever we were watching the game. I think we were up in the director's box, and we got word saying, so Bobby would like to see you afterwards. So we were like, oh, it's like we thought we were being called to the headmaster's office.
Either that or getting the game, and it wasn't getting the game.
I had my boots with us just in case.
Aye.
But we were called downstairs, and we went to his office, and there he was, and it was after the game, and there was a few people around, and we knocked on the door, and the door kind of swung open, and there was Bobby, larger than life, and he threw up his arms in the air, boys, come in, and began to introduce us to everybody in the room, and he said, these are two of our greatest supporters, and got us a cup of tea, got out the biscuits, and we sat there and just had the crack with him. And every time we were at the match and we'd hear word of it, we'd get a little word, come down to the players' lounge afterwards. And we followed Newcastle in Europe. We travelled to Barcelona, to Milan, to Turin, following the team, and every time we'd be in the hotel, Bobby would be there, and he'd come over and say hello, and he always had...
Thanks for supporting us. Always thank you for supporting them, which was always just lovely.
It was at Peter Beardsley's testimonial dinner at the Gosforth Park Hotel. And I had a great night with him. I remember he brought along, you know, people brought different things along to be auctioned, and he brought along Pele's shirt from the 1970, I think it was the 1970 World Cup, beautiful yellow Brazil shirt, signed by Pele.
During the tournament, I actually played for England against Brazil, and Pele did not play. And I was so disappointed, because I would like to have said for the rest of my life, well, I stood on the same field as Pele. I'm not able to do that. We drew 0-0. The Brazilian team was a little disappointing, and the management decided that was the time to bring into the team young Pele. He was incredible, sensational. He had a great football brain. He was a great athlete. He was quick. He knew where the goal was, and eventually turned out, I think, to be the greatest player the world has ever seen.
Bobby Monter, the captain of Newcastle United, receiving the Intercity Stairs Cup and showing it to the fans.
I played against him when he was at West Bromwich Albion. And David Craig, my soulmate over the years, phoned me up a long time. He said, do you realise you played against him, Bobby? I said, no. When was it? And it was like in the early 60s when he was at West Brom.
1984, I was called up for the Welsh team. Gordon Milne gave me a phone call and said, get yourself up to Wrexham, pack a toothbrush, come and pick your boots up. Bobby Robson's been on the phone. And I met him on that day. He was waiting for me at the hotel and introduced me to the players and immediately made me feel at ease. And so, yeah, and it was the start of a wonderful relationship.
Well, I first met him, I think, was back in the 80s.
Crowner's got it. He's 3 yards clear. Crown leading, and Scott closes, but he won't catch him. And Crown wins the World Championship.
But I was aware of him long before that, because when I was about 13, 14, my uncle Bobby used to come back from Canada, where he'd emigrated to, and he used to play football. So he was a West Brom player, and he was in the team with Bobby Robson. And in fact, they went to Canada together. They both went over to Canada. My uncle stayed there, never came back. But when he used to come back, the odd holidays and things, and he used to chat to me about it, and Bobby Robson was just starting to make a bit of a name for himself. And he said, oh, you know, he used to tell me about him, and I used to play with him, and he's this and he's that. And then a few years later, when Bobby had become much more famous, and Ipswich were winning things all over the place. And then my uncle said, well, if you meet him, tell him Bobby Cram's still in Canada and would like a job back in football in England.
Evening by the firelight's glow, you'll hold me close and never let
Mr. Wonderful, that's you.
We always had what they call in those days a radiogram, which was a mixture of a wireless or a radio and a turntable. And all my brothers were sort of music lovers, and we used to buy the old records, you know, the old, was it 33 revs per minute, and then it went to 45 revs per minute. So we all used to buy a record. I mean, in those days it was Frank Sinatra, of course, Bing Crosby, Victor Moan. I don't know if you have heard.
Yeah.
He was one of my favourites, Victor Moan. Perry Como, of course, Dick Haymes,
Yes.
Mel Torme. Those were the artists. But you know, later on in life, you know, I got to like Shirley Bassey, Diana Krall, Sarah Vaughan, Ella Fitzgerald. So they were all my favourites, you know. My love, really, and still is the old ballads, the love ballads, the evergreens, the ones that people have been singing for 50 years, and they were singing the same songs for another 50 years. I mean, those sort of songs, you know, won't die.
I'm in the mood for love, simply because you're near me. Funny, but when you're near me, I'm in the mood for love. Heaven is in your eyes, bright as the stars we're under. Oh, is that any wonder? I'm in the mood for love. Well, stop to think of whether this little dream might fade. We've put our hearts together, now we're one, I'm not afraid. If there's a cloud above, if it should rain, we'll let it. But for tonight, forget it. Oh, I'm in the mood for love. Woo! Love, 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 love. Love, 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 love. I start to think of whether this little dream might fade. We've put our hearts together, now we're one. I know I'm not afraid. I'm in the mood for your love, simply because you're near me. Oh, baby, when you're so near me, you know I'm in the mood for love. I know I'm in the mood for love, simply because you're near me. I'm in the mood for love. You know I'm in the mood for love. Sweet la 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 la. I'm in the mood for love. Thank you.
I knew Bobby when I was manager at Hartlepool and Lothian up in Scotland, and I was struggling a little bit, and I phoned him up and said, look, I'm a bit desperate for players, and had a little chat with him, and before I knew where I was, he said, why don't you come down to Ipswich, and I'll let you have a look at some of our players who are not good enough for us. So I drove all the way down there, stayed overnight, took me to the training session, and he says, what are you after? So I'm after a left back. He says, well, this young kid playing here, he's got a chance. He's not good enough for us. He'll do your job. So he actually took me to training and did it. I got him for nothing. So I took him back to Scotland, and he did a great job for me. A guy called Shields, as I recall. So that was my first meeting with Sir Bobby.
He was a magnificent player, a great character, had a winning streak in him as a player, and he served Newcastle and Sunderland very well.
And when I got my cancer, and I was working a suite at St James's Park, that's when I really got to know Sir Bobby, when he'd been battling for years. And he was great to me then, because he would take me aside, say, how are you? As he did. And I would say, well, yeah, I'm okay, but how are you? And he wouldn't, he would just
He would just waffle on about something else, kept back saying to me, and then he'd give me a little lecture about, it's not easy, you know, son, you've got to do this and you've got to do that. And he was just, he was an inspiration to me, not about the football, but about the cancer, you know, and because I'd got the cancer. He was great for me, but the one thing I remember about him, he was so unselfish. He kept asking about me, and I kept asking about him, because he was obviously a bit more serious than I was. And he just left me. He had these little great lines. I remember when they named the suite after me at St James's Park, and he came along from his suite, because he had one named after him as well, and he came along, when he wasn't very well, I have to say, he came along, he was in his wheelchair at the time, and he sat outside my suite, and I could just see him, and he went, come here, come here. Again I went out, and he says to me, how are you? I said, well, I'm okay, I'm on chemo and all the rest, and we had a good little chat, and he was talking about other things. I kept saying, how are you? Wouldn't answer. And eventually, when he, just as he was about to leave, he pointed to the Monaco suite. He says, it's good that, isn't it? And I said, well, yeah, it is actually. He says, not before time, and just went off. And it's a great little line that was. Not before time. He just did off. It was brilliant.
I think there's probably a million stories that we could tell about Bobby. I think there's some great ones, some ridiculous ones, some daft ones. It's well renowned, him getting names wrong, and you know, sometimes I used to think he's actually doing that on purpose, being a bit of a wise old fox here and getting the affection of people and getting the laugh off people, which is why he'd done it. I still don't know whether he was doing it on purpose or not.
I'd probably worked with him 3 or 4 times, you know, and I would go to the ante-room where people were having drinks before the dinner, and he'd see me come in, and then he'd completely ignore me, and I'm thinking, oh, what have I done, you know? And then I'd see him talking to the fella next to him going, and then a couple of minutes later, he'd look up and he'd go, is that you, Brendan's son? There was no way he'd remembered my name. He'd checked it with the guy. But I think, you see, that's brilliant man management. Because if Sir Bobby says, hello, Brendan's son, the whole room goes, bah, he knows Bobby, you know. So that's really lovely of him to do that.
He was a character in football that I don't think we'll ever see again. Not only was he very, very clever, and I'll not be any part of this business where they said he couldn't remember this and he could remember everything. Believe me, he used to wind me up, not the other way around. You know, and people used to say, oh, well, he's forgot this name, he's forgot that name. Yeah, of course he did. He used to do it to wind them up.
And then the whole thing fell on its behind because I was in St James's Park to do a dinner that Bobby was going to be at. No, he wasn't going to be at. And I walked into the lift and he's standing there. And I thought, all right. He says, hello, Brendan's son. I thought, big bucket, he does remember me name.
What do you want me to say about Maradona? Except I would say he was the second best player in the world. I would rate Pelé first, and I would rate Maradona second. But Maradona in 1986 was then the best player in the world. Pelé by this time had receded, you know, he'd stopped playing. But Maradona was just coming into his quality. He's just about to show everybody what he could do. And he was a very gifted player. He was only 5'7" or 5'8", but terrifically powerful, strong, quick, and he had an eye for everything. You know, when you have to pass the ball, he passed it. When you have to stop the ball, he stopped it. When you have to shoot, he shot. When you have to dribble, he dribbled. Everything that was right about a game of football, Maradona had it in his head. He was a most wonderful player. I didn't like him, of course, because of what he did to us. It was a moment I'll never forget, because I knew at the time that he had actually handled the ball, pushed the ball into the goal. I could not believe it when both the referee and the linesman gave a goal and signified that they hadn't seen it. I could not believe it. I remember saying to Don Howe, my assistant, Don, the referee hasn't seen him punch the ball. He's actually given a goal. And then he ran towards the centre circle, the referee, and sure enough, his decision was final. He hadn't, so I suppose he hadn't seen the incident, and he gave a goal. So it was a cruel blow for us. We were playing well at the time. I had a good team. We had ambitions that we'd get to the final in spite of playing against Argentina and Maradona, but we just felt we could win the match. And without that incident, we might have done so.
Do you remember the Arsenal when we were in Highbury, where we'd beaten Arsenal?
Yeah, and went top of the
Highbury, went top of the league, and we hadn't won in London for years. Hadn't won away in London for years. And Thierry Henry went mad at the end. Do you remember? He went really mad at the ref, and all the people, a lot of the Arsenal fans were really kicking off and stuff. And we saw to Bobby, and he said, some people around here need to learn how to lose. And it just, from him, that meant a lot. And you know, it just, he was a gentleman like that. He had integrity, and
those were the kind of values that he kind of held dear.
He's a world-renowned coach, fantastic manager, and apart from the football side of things, he's a great guy as well. So it's hard to put into words. You can't say it all in the one sentence, but he's a great guy to have worked with and a great guy to know.
Foster wins the Commonwealth Championship.
Away the lads, Brendan Foster.
With Bobby, it was all about his knowledge and his passion, and I've been really, really impressed in the last few months. Whilst he was ill, and then more recently since he died, about the position he was held. He was held in such high esteem by people who you would have thought Bobby held in high esteem, and it was something which it only comes to a few to be held in such a venerated position, really, by his peers.
This year's Lifetime Achievement Award goes to the gaffer, Sir Bobby Robson.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you, Sir Alex. Thank you to the BBC for this magnificent presentation and for giving me one of the greatest evenings of my life. Thank you very much indeed.
Bobby was a legend within the game of football, internationally as well as nationally. He wasn't. People talk about him being a man of the North East. He was a man born of the North East, but he's a man whose influence spread far and wide beyond the North East. I mean, they knew about Bobby in Brazil. They knew about him all over the place, and it was his passion and his love of the game. And I was with Bobby at a football match about 2 years ago when a young Wayne Rooney was making his debut for England. I think they were playing Azerbaijan up at just after Bobby had lost his job at Newcastle, and we went together to the match. And half time he was suddenly just laughing, and I said, "What you like?" He said Wayne Rooney he just loves the game so much. He says he's got such a passion for playing the game. He said not only that, he says he's England's Pelé, and I know Bobby would miss seeing Wayne Rooney at the World Cup this year or next year. So even in his down days, even in his bad days, in his own terms of his own football career, the game itself couldn't fail to overwhelm Bobby.
He was a great character, Bobby, and he was a lovely guy, right up until the very last. As ill as he was, I saw him at the start of the summer, in about June, July. June it would have been, in the cricket at Durham, and he sat me down and he said, "Right, tell me about Usain Bolt. I want to know, why can he run so fast? I want to know." That was Bobby, wasn't it? He was infectious in every way. It doesn't matter, even not just about football, about any type of sport, and he still had a very sharp and inquiring mind.
He was a great footballer. He played for England. He was a great manager. Witness his record right from. He took Ipswich to. Nobody knew where Ipswich was. It was the most dreadful place in the world to try and get to. Once you hit the M1, you knew to get 50 miles across to Ipswich took hours. But he was there. He won the FA Cup. He got the promotion. He got them on the first division. He won the FA Cup. They were second in the first division for 2 years in succession. He won the UEFA Cup, as it was called at the time. Then he went and he did the unthinkable. He went out to Portugal. And of course he won the championships there. And then he went to Barcelona and he won the championship with Barcelona. I mean, what else could we expect this man to do? And he came to Newcastle because he loved Newcastle. Hey, Jeff, and we love him. He is a man that I don't know anybody has a bad word for him.
I mean, the thing about Bobby, everyone talks about enthusiasm and his passion, and I think those are the two things that you would pick out above anything else. They were contagious and unquenchable. I think he was fiercely loyal to the players and the people that he trusted, and that was one of his great strengths. And he loved everything about life, and he had a huge enthusiasm for not just football, which was paramount to him, it was everything, but all other facets of life. And he really was an incredible bloke. And I think in this country there are not, especially in football, there's always a group of people that don't like you somewhere. But with Bobby was the exception. I think he was universally loved.
Gaza. Well, in 1990, which was probably his best year ever in his life, when he played for England in the World Cup, he was, in my opinion, the best young player in the world at that time. Kid was sensational. He was only 21, mad as a hatter. I called him, as you know, daft as a brush, which he was. He was hyper all the time, but he had this wonderful skill. And Gaza's brain was for football. He had the most wonderful football brain. He knew where to pass the ball, he knew when to pass the ball, he knew how to pass the ball, he knew when to dribble, he knew when to pass, he knew when to tackle. He could create things, he saw things that nobody else could see. He had a clever pass in his locker. He was a sensational kid. Everybody liked him because he made you laugh, you know. He was dressing before the match, put his nicks on. We call them nicks, you know, shorts. And he kind of pulled a face and didn't like his shorts. I said, what's the matter? I was close to him. So what's the matter? He said, oh, these don't fit me. I want to look posh. I said, we'll change them. So I got the kid guy to give him another pair of shorts. He tried those on, and they didn't fit. And there was only small, medium, and large, and he was too big to wear the small ones. So there's only two choices that he had. He tried both on, and he didn't like them. So I winked my eye at the kit man. I said, just give me those shorts. And I took them off him, and I went round the corner, and I put them back, because they were brand new shorts, and I put them back in the cellophane bag, all right? And then I came out and took this pair of shorts out, pretending they were just being taken off for the first time. I said, here you are, Gaza. You like them, try those ones on. So he tried on the first pair that he wore. He said, just the job, he said, this is just what I want.
He knows every player in the whole wide world, where they live, what's the name of their families, how many kids they got, their addresses, even the colour of the front doors. Every football player in the world, that's how good he was. But playing under manager was just, it wasn't just his knowledge of the game, it was the way like he wouldn't sometimes he'd do a talk with everyone there, and all the squad, about the team we're playing against. He knew everything about the team that we're playing against, how quick they were, where they move inside or left. You know, his just knowledge was unbelievable. Then after that, he'd sometimes pull every one of them individual to the side and tell them who you're up against, what you like, how's he going to play against you, this is what you got to do. And I mean, I was fortunate, lucky enough for you. I mean, he was the one that gave us a chance to play in the World Cup, you know.
When we went to play West Germany in the semi-final, I went to him and I said, Gaza, tomorrow you're going to play against the best midfield player in the world. He said, I'm not. I said, you are. I said, Lothar Matthäus is the most wonderful player. He's captain of Germany. He's not captain of Germany for nothing else. I said, he's a terrific player. And I said, you're going to play against the best player in the world. I repeated the statement. He said, I'm not. He said,
he is. And I walked away.
He's playing against the best player in the world. In other words, he's playing against me.
And we went 20 yards and looked, and he was like, oh.
You know, he was 21 years of age. How old was I in 1990? I was, 50 or whatever. And he just put me in my place.
I couldn't sleep in all the places in bed. And I thought it was 10:30, I can't sleep thinking about this, Matthäus. And I was like that. So I went and played tennis, 11 o'clock at night, game for the semi-final. So I said, so Bobby's going around making sure everyone's in bed, asleep, and, not to make sure you're okay in the room. Where's Gaza? Where is he? Next thing out, Gaza! Gascoigne! I'm like, oh no. So I'm playing tennis because these two Americans, right? And he come past me, flying past me, he went to the barracks. Do you not know who he is? Do you not know who he is? He's got the most important game of his life. Obviously the Americans had never clue who I was because they didn't really win in football at that time really that much. So as he was talking to them, bollocking them, I done a run in my room. So right, I done a run in my room, open the door. I went, Chris, I went, tell him I'm sleeping, tell him I'm sleeping. Chris, when he's asleep, you better come in. You can't open the door. She puts it black out of him, write the letter out. See you in the morning.
And that's what he was. He was a terrific kid.
I think it was a quarter-final of the World Cup. Got all the team in John Howe, and we're watching a match. And so I was watching the match, and I'm thinking, I didn't like want to know who I'm playing against because I knew I could beat the guy anyway. So it wasn't a problem, you know. So I was watching this game for about 10, 15 minutes, and then all of a sudden the other team were playing. And every time we passed the ball, good pass, I was going, I started, When the ball went dead, I went, Trying again, When the ball went dead again, bad pass, All of a sudden, Chris Wallace started joining, right? Then Steve McMahon, right? And John Bond, and then Don Howe started joining, And there was bad pass, Oh, Bobby went mad. So Bobby went, he went, yeah, you can, but you won't, overget, will you? Oh, I went, not. Yeah, so he just brought it to the dude, you know.
We had a European game in midweek on the Wednesday, and we'd flew over Tuesday, and we got to the hotel, and he pulled me on the Tuesday afternoon. He said to me, Alan, I'm gonna give you a rest tomorrow night. I'm not going to play you. And I thought to myself, you've put me on the plane, got me here, and you're going to sit me on the bench in the freezing cold in the snow, and you're going to call that a rest? But I never said anything. I just let it ride and thought, well, yeah, fine. So we played the game Wednesday evening. I sat on the bench shivering in a foot of snow. Didn't get on, but we won the game, so it was the right decision. So we get on the plane to come home, and the flight's delayed. We tried to land in Newcastle, but we can't because of the fog. So we have to fly to Manchester. We fly to Manchester, but we have to get a car back up to Newcastle. So we don't get back to Newcastle at just after 7 o'clock in the morning on Thursday morning. And we were in training at midday. So I thought, well, I can't let this go. I've got to go and see Bobby and try and get an explanation here. And I said, well, that was some rest, wasn't it? I sat on the bench in the snow. It took us 7 or 8 hours to get home from Norway. I said, that was a great rest. I feel great and ready and refreshed to go for Saturday now. And he just looked at me and he said, son, I make the decisions. We won the game. You get paid to play. Just go and play. And I just thought he was absolutely spot on in what he said. And having spent sort of 8 weeks doing the management stuff myself with Newcastle, he was absolutely right. And I didn't think so at the time, but it's only now that you come out of the game and realise how experienced, and he's been in that position a million times. It was the first time it happened to me, so he knew best, as usual.
We were in Porto for the European Championships in 2004, and we decided to go for a curry. I said, Bob, we're going for a curry. He said, I don't eat curry. I've never had a curry. I said, come on, you'll have a curry. And when we got to the curry house, the only curry house in Portugal probably, he said, what do we drink with this? I said, have a beer, won't you? He said, I don't drink beer. I've never had a beer in my life. I said, come on, you were a young professional footballer. Of course you had a beer in your life. He said, no, never had a beer. I said, go on, have a beer. He said, I'll have one. He had 4. He got tucked into the curry like he was a very hungry man. And Ali McCoy was working us at the time. He nudged me. He said, he's only 1 step away from his first crack cocaine, he said.
The relationship with Marino, Jose and I, was top class. I never knew him. I landed off a plane. He was there to greet me. The president of Sporting was there, but he couldn't speak English. So Jose said to me, Mister, call me Mister. And he said, Mister, I'm Jose Marino. The chairman doesn't speak English, so he's asked me to say a few words. But he also has asked me to tell you that he's appointing me as your interpreter. Well, I couldn't speak Portuguese either, so I needed him. So I shook him by the hand and said, well, thank you very much. And we worked together for 6 years, every day on the pitch for 6 years. He was a fantastic interpreter. He could speak good English. He had a football knowledge. He was clever because he listened, he learned, he looked, and he wrote. He spent with me 6 years every day on a football pitch. And so we became very good friends. I taught him the game. I taught him how to coach. I taught him about tactics. Like I said, he's clever, he's very intelligent. He listened, he learned. And he was a very, very good interpreter. And I'll tell you why. If I wanted to say something to you, direct, I could say it. Jose wasn't a player, hadn't been a great player. So you would have thought that an interpreter would have been shy about speaking very strongly to top players. But he could do that. Jose could go to Figo, for instance. Everybody's heard about Figo, the great Portuguese player. And he could go to Figo and say, in a very strong way, a very strong manner, exactly what I said and how I said it. In other words, he could go to Figo and say, Figo, Mr. says that you are coming inside, you're losing our shape, we can't get the ball to you, you're cluttering up the midfield, he wants you to stay wide, we'll get the ball to you, and your job then is to go down the flank, attacking full-backs and get the ball in the box. Now, he could go to Figo, or he could go to Ronaldo, or he could go to Guardiola, who's now the manager, the coach of Barcelona. He could go to every one of those players who were super players, way above him. He was an interpreter. But he could actually speak the way that I would speak to the player, and that was his strength. So whatever I said, and however I said it, he could repeat it. So he was always going to be successful.
When he was manager of Porto in Portugal, he invited me out for 4 days to stay with him and do these articles on him. I flew, there was about 4 or 5 different stops. I got there, my clothes didn't have any clothes. Bobby come down to the hotel and he kitted me out in all his clothes for the 4 days. So I wore the Porto blazer with the badge on and went out on town and was a hero around town. It was like when Newcastle United gear here. I was an absolute star because I had Bobby's gear on, and he was so warm, and it was the first time he talked about the cancer situation, and he'd won everything out there, and he'd come back and he'd talk with great passion, loving Newcastle, and eventually he'd come back here, a lovely, warm man.
I went away in 1950, came back in almost 1999, 49 years. Never ever thought I'd come back. I left as a boy, 17, went to Fulham, stayed away 50 years. I never thought the opportunity would ever present itself, but it did. Ruud Gullit left the club and they were looking for a manager. And for about 3 weeks it was dead, nothing happened. And I thought, oh, they think I'm too old. But eventually they came to me, rang me up and invited me to come back to the club.
We met down there in a friend's house and we went on and told him about the club and one thing and another, and I wasn't getting anywhere with him. I could tell he wasn't really interested. And we went through the whole paraphernalia of what he should do and what he shouldn't do and one thing and another. And he said, listen, I'm not really interested. He says, I just want to get up there and start. I said, but we haven't even talked about money yet. You don't even know what we're going to offer you. He says, I'm not interested. He says, I know you look after her. He says, so I want to get up there now and get up there and I want to be in for training tomorrow morning.
I never thought I would do it, but it was a thrill for me. I'm a North East boy. I was born and bred here. I was educated here. I played my early football here. And to come back was marvellous. And my wife, being a Durham girl, of course, was delighted. So it was a happy reunion. And I loved my job. I was here 5 years. Took the club over when they were bottom, as you know. They were struggling. That's why Ruud Gullit left. And a lot of work to do. We had to get out of that bottom position where we were. It looked like, you know, a relegation battle, but by the turn of the year, round about February, March, we were in a safe position, so we did very, very well. And then we improved the team a little bit by bit after that, and so the 5 years I had, it was sensational, terrific, exciting, happy, very contented, and I had a good team. I built a good team.
For me, the great thing about him is his man management, was the knack of getting the best out of both very, very young professionals, but very, very old or very experienced professionals as well. And you know, in today's game that you get some 17 or 18-year-olds who are on £1 million a year plus, and can get carried away with themselves at times. He knew how to handle them. And for a man of his age to have managed in the eras that he has done, and to continue to get the success, tells you that he was something very, very special.
I met Bobby a number of times, and the favourite story that I've got that he told me, now this shows the man's humility. He was England manager. England were doing quite well, 1990 I think it was, and he'd gone to see a match in Spain at Barcelona in the Nou Camp, and it was packed in Spain, obviously doing well, and Bobby walked out to go to his seat, and he said the place erupted, and he was walking and thought, this is fantastic, you know, I didn't think they liked me as much as that, you know, and so he walked on and resisted the temptation to wave, you know, and cheer, you know, all of that business, which was lucky, because he said he walked and walked, and the crowd got louder and louder, and as he got to his seat, he was just about to raise his hand and acknowledge the crowd when he turned round, and behind him was Placido Domingo, accepting the applause of the crowd. So dead lucky, and that's Bobby telling a story like that, against himself, really. He was a hell of a man.
I was sitting in the BBC commentary box in South Shields watching Bobby Robson and Peter Reid starting the Great North Run, and there was a point where Bobby before Bobby was supposed to fire the gun, he fired the gun, and there was a photograph and a little piece of film which you can capture somewhere of Peter Reid thinking Bobby'd shot him.
One of our favourite memories of him, I think, is when he told us what he thought of us, and he told us he thought we had a future, and he said, "You're quite good. You're quite good, the pair of you. You're quite good." So that's what we've always taken with us. So Bobby Robson has said we were quite good. That's good enough for us.
How would you sum up Bobby Robson?
Gentleman, committed, dedicated. I think all of those words put into one, and someone who is very, very close to my heart.
Obviously, Impact was around, and
he loved the show, didn't he?
He loved the show, and you know, I'll never forget him. Just this year, in April, they had a tribute for Denise and I at the Civic Centre in Newcastle from the Variety Club, and I couldn't believe it. I was sat there, and he walked in to this do to come and
was he lost?
Pay his respects to me and Denise, you know. And I'll never forget that, because he wasn't well then, you know. He wasn't well, you know, and he made the effort to come in and support me and Denise. And I tell you what, I was so flattered, and I'll never forget that.
Was on the 9th of June 1862 on a summer's afternoon. I took the bus from Barbaras, she was heavy laden, and away we went along Collingwood Street that's on the road to Bladen. Oh, me lad, you should have seen us standing Passing the folks along the road just as he was standing. All the lads and lasses there and all the smiling faces gathered along the Scotland Road to see the bleeding races.
Flew past Armstrong's factory and up by the Robin Adair. But ganning over the railway bridge, the boat's wheel flew up there. The lasses lost their crinolines in fields that hide their faces. I got two black eyes and a broken nose just contemplating races.
Oh, me lad, you should have seen us standing, passing the folks along the road just as they were standing. All the lads and lasses there and all the smiling faces gathered along the Scotland Road to see the bleeding races.
Well, when we got the wheel put on, away we went again. But them as had their noses broke, they went back our yam.
Some went to the dispensary, and some to Dr. Gibbs's,
and some to the infirmary to mend their broken ribses.
I can't think of another Geordie who is universally respected and loved the way Bobby Robson was. I mean, the world over. Yeah. Respected and loved.
To see the bleeding races.
Flew across the Tyne Bridge and came to bleeding tune. The barman he was calling then, they called him Jackie Broon. So I'm talking to some chaps, Nelly was persuading to go and see Geordie Ridley show at the Mechanics Hall in Blaydon.
Oh, me lad, you should have seen us standing, passing the folks along the road just as they were standing. All the lads and lasses there and all the smiling faces gathered along the Scotland Road to see the bleeding races.
When we got to Paradise, there were funny games begun. There were 4 and 20 on the bus, and how we danced and sung. The Carl on me to sing a song, I sung a Patsy Fagan.
I danced a jig and swung me twig on the way.
Oh, me lads.
I remember me feeling of elation when Bobby finally got the Newcastle job, and for me, he just embodies enthusiasm, and always will, and I love enthusiastic people, and nobody came near Sir Bob for enthusiasm.
The rain it poured down all the day and made the ground quite muddy. Coffee Johnny had a white hat on, there was shouting way stored cuddy. There was Spice Stars and Monkey Shows and odd wives selling ciders. And the chap with the Harmony roundabout shouting, "Now me lads, for riders!"
Oh, me lad, you should have seen us standing, passing the folks along the road just as they were standing. All the lads and lasses there and all the smiling faces gathered along the Scotland Road to see the bleeding races.
No word for Bobby Robson, hero of the tune.
A football man,
A gentleman,
who never let we do.
friendly word, a cheery smile and brave right to the end.
We're proud that you were one of ours.
Sir Bob,
Auf Wiedersehen.
I look over me professional life, Barcelona, England, Ipswich, Newcastle, and won cups, won trophies. So I did very well, without being boastful. Worked hard, knew the game, could impart the game, knew the value of a good player, could judge a good player, could judge a bad one, by the way, as well. So my career, professionally, I enjoyed very much. And I was sorry when it all ended, to be honest. I then got involved in the Sir Bobby Robson Foundation, raising money for a charity which is for the North East people. Didn't know how interested it would become, but and I never thought I'd ever get involved in charitable work, although I used to support charities. And I must say I found it delightful. I'm meeting so many different facets of life. I mean people who are very kind and generous and faithful, and support my foundation, which I find quite, what's the word? Well, finding it quite amazing, to be honest. Meeting ordinary guys who stuff £20 notes into your hand and say, "That's for your charity." And I keep saying, "Give us your name and address. I want to write to you." They said, no, just put it into the charity. So I'm meeting all types of people. I mean the corporate people, people who've got a few bob, people who haven't got any, people who haven't got much money but are willing to kind of subscribe to the foundation, and I must say they touch my heart.
The foundation has now raised over £2 million, and I'm sure, as I said, it'll continue to go from strength to strength. Thank you.
He wasn't well and shouldn't have gone, but he knew he was going to go 5 days before he died with Mum and my brothers. And we got him to the game, and it was a big effort to get him there. And I could see during the game that he couldn't really focus on the pitch. He couldn't see the pitch and the players at all, but he had a little monitor in front of him, so he was watching bits of the game, but he didn't really have the strength to focus or see. And I was sitting near him, and I could see that he couldn't see the game, and he was just using all his strength just to be there. And then on the minibus on the way back, he's strapped into his wheelchair with all the strappings across him with his hat on, and the hat's banging against the top of the minibus there, and he's at the back and we're all seated in front. And there's a couple of minutes silence where because we left the game 5 minutes early to get away and get him back. And I turned around to him, and I was in the front, he was right in the back, and I said, "Did you enjoy it, Dad?" And he went, "Yes," as if it was this, last, it's all he had sort of to give. And I said, well, what did you think of the game? He said, "How did Gascoigne play?" And I said, "He did all right, Dad, he did all right." And Dad said, "Yeah, but he's not fit, is he?" And I said, "Well, he's not, Dad, but he came off at half time." I said, "And he didn't get booked?" And he went, "Nah, didn't get booked." And just left it at that. And it just brought back memories of his passion for football, and that's what he loved. All he was concerned about was how Gascoigne played on a game that, where 20 years after the semi-final, and it just spoke about him, really. It encapsulated everything about him.
When he was in that wheelchair and couldn't hardly walk, couldn't hardly talk, he was still doing charity work, writing out, signing photographs and all that for charity. Some people don't even do that at the best of times, but someone to go through cancer 5 times and still that, and couldn't hardly talk, and on medication, right, to keep him going, and still doing the things. It's unbelievable. The guy's just incredible.